it's Dominique, the Nourishing Mystic, and today I am making some ginger pastilles, also called pastilles, depending on how you want to pronounce it, but essentially they are little herbal chewables, and here's an example of ones that I've made before. I know they're not the prettiest to look at, but it is natural medicine, and essentially I would just take maybe 1 to 3 of these, usually every morning. And essentially it's a mix of powdered ginger and honey, and I coated it with cinnamon. And today I'm going to be coating it with cinnamon and powdered orange peel. And the beauty of this is that it is just a single, shot of ginger. Like when you chew into it, you definitely get the immediate heat of ginger. So it is very hot, it is very spicy. If you're not a big fan of ginger, you can use the same method with any powdered herb that you would like. But I love ginger. It's definitely one of my favorite herbs, and I really like these to help with nausea, gas, indigestion. But typically in the morning, I found myself using it for morning allergies. So if you're like me, you wake up with a runny nose, you tend to be maybe sneezing in the morning. And if you do wake up that way where you're just watery all throughout, going through tissues, just like I said, about 1 to 3 of these typically takes care of it for me, where it will just kind of clear out my sinuses and be just what I need in the morning. They also tend to wake me up energetically in the morning as well. And I've also found them helpful if you ever wake up during the night and again have to go to the bathroom due to any stomach problems. Again, ginger is great for that. I've had times where I've had to wake up in the middle of the night and I just feel shaky, just very shaky, kind of a cold feeling. And again, I might be dealing with the allergies, runny nose, so kind of that cold, wet condition. Again, ginger comes in really handy, and it's convenient to have my jar of these right by my bed. And I'm getting kind of low now, so that's why I wanted to make a few more. So it's just convenient if I ever wake up feeling sick in the middle of the night, or feeling cold and shaky, or feeling like I'm having a bunch of allergy problems, anything like that. They're right by my bed, so I can just reach over and grab some. And immediately after that, it'll take care of that cold, shaky, nauseous kind of feeling almost instantly. Like it only takes a couple minutes to dissolve. You could either let it dissolve on your tongue or chew them, give it a couple minutes, and then I'll be ready to comfortably go back to sleep. Or in the case of the morning, I'll be able to comfortably go about my morning routine, which is usually morning journaling. So that is some of the goodness of ginger. You know, if you're already familiar with ginger, you know what an amazing herb it is. And if you're looking for a quick way to get those benefits, let's say faster than having to do a tea of ginger, or if you're tired of buying ginger chews, if you buy those already, things like that, this is just a super convenient way to have it right next to your bed. So to do this, again, we are using ginger powder, and I've used about a tablespoon of ginger. This is one of those recipes where it's a general measurement, but through experimenting, you'll kind of find how much you need to use. But in this recipe, I'm using a tablespoon of ginger, and I have mixed half a teaspoon of cinnamon, so powdered cinnamon, and half a teaspoon of powdered orange peel, and I've spread it on the plate. And I have 1 tablespoon of honey. So the idea is we're going to slowly mix in the honey with the ginger for us to get a rollable consistency. So just a little tiny bit of honey at a time, mixing in with the ginger periodically until it's rollable. And then we're going to roll each pastille in the cinnamon orange peel mixture to coat it. And again, I like to make these, if you notice, these are very small. You can actually make them as big and thick as you want. But in the case of ginger, because it is so hot and so spicy and so intense on the tongue, I like to make them small. Like in this case, a little goes a long way. And the process, it is a little bit of a slow process to mix each of these pastilles together. So I recommend to make this a meditative practice. Stir your magic into it through the process, kind of be in a magical state of mind. And I'll just readjust the camera and show you kind of what the process looks like, and probably speed up the footage too. All right, this is going to be interesting to do while I'm going to try to keep it so you can see the process. Just a little bit at a time here. That's plenty. And notice how slow I'm dripping it in. Probably should even be going a bit slower, because the idea is not for these to be really sweet. I'll say I don't even notice the honey that much. The idea is just to bind enough honey to mix the ginger together. So really just enough, and I'd say we're almost there. If you notice how this is getting thicker, especially in the center there. And I just want to get the rest of the powder going. And this is almost just right. Like I'd say we're about there. So notice how it's all clumped into one big ball. I might just get a little bit more mixed in, but I think that's actually plenty. So I didn't even need to use this whole tablespoon. So we'll set that aside and use that for my tea. Actually, I might have added a little bit too much. Like, you see how much you can see that it's definitely sticky. You can definitely see how liquidy it's starting to get. I actually probably went too quickly on that and added much more honey than I intended to. So you actually don't even need to add that much. It really just needed to be enough to come together. And typically I would see a bit more of the powder coming through, but I poured that honey in too fast. And it is very, very sticky. So in this case, I'm probably going to stop and put a little bit of water on my fingers, because obviously when you start to mix this together with your fingers in the little bowls, the honey is going to stick. It's a very sticky process. It's a very messy process, but the more honey you add, the more messy it's going to be. The one caution to remember, if you do use water on your hands, you want to try to only use a very small amount of water, and you want to try to not introduce water into this mixture, because water introduced can also introduce the risk of, let's say, like mold and things like that, spoiling the mixture. Otherwise, the pastilles are typically good for about 6 months, but that can be decreased, again, depending on how much water you add into the mixture. I'm not too worried about that, because I know I take these like every day. And in this case, with all of this honey, I definitely am going to need to water my hands. All right, now that I have watered hands, I'm going to take just a littlest bit. This one's actually going to be big, a little bit bigger than what I want it to be. And I'm going to roll it around this edge of the cinnamon. Hopefully you can still see that. And I want all of the sticky part from the ginger to be covered so that when we touch it again, it's no longer sticky. So yeah, that's a big one. It's a bit bigger than what I'd normally like it to be. So let's try for something a little smaller. I might even decide to add more ginger to this mixture because I added so much honey. And because it has so much honey, that's making it even more sticky than it normally should be. But here's an example of a small one. So really that's a good size comparison. Big pastille, small pastille. This one's about to be huge. And yeah, definitely more sticky than how I would want it to be. So we'll see how this goes. And you see how I'm kind of struggling with it getting stuck on my finger because I used too much honey. Too much honey, not enough herb. But if you're in this position and you decide that it's really too much honey, you can always add more, which is what's nice about this recipe, is that it is flexible and customizable to your needs. So I'd say that's a pretty nice size. In the morning, I'd probably just need one about that size. So now we've got big, medium, large. And typically I want to make all of them be like the medium size. Yeah, it's way too sticky. It's so sticky I can barely even make it into a concrete ball. Yeah, this is not how the process is supposed to go. But you see how I kind of can rub it around. So this is too messy. I'm gonna grab some more ginger and add more ginger to the mix. All right, now that you've seen the wrong consistency, we're gonna add more ginger to try and get it to the right consistency. Because honestly, kitchen witchery, herbalism, whatever it is you do, if you've been doing it for a while, you know it's a learning experience. It's a process. It requires sometimes tinkering and maneuvering. And see, I just kind of poured it in. I didn't even measure it. It's probably, I want to say about another teaspoon of ginger. And it still might not be enough. We'll see. I added a lot of honey. But that's the fun of it. You can see me work through it. So that'll help you when you do it yourself to kind of know what is looking good and what is not looking good. And see what it looks like to let the honey really get away from you. So I'll actually add almost another teaspoon. This is better. So we're almost at this point, nearly about 2 tablespoons of ginger. Oops, caught that with my legs. Oh, yeah, we're definitely at 2 tablespoons now. This is better. This is more towards the consistency that we want. This is much better. Yes, now we're talking. This is what we want to see. really close so you can see, like, that's more of the consistency that we're looking for when we can see the thickness of the herbs and not just the shininess of the honey. And honestly, even if yours was a bit thicker than this, like, I'm still thinking maybe a little bit more ginger to get it to where we want it to be. Yes, this is more like it. So you see how it's almost gritty, but it's still coming together solidly. We can still shape it into those balls. That's the consistency that we want. So much better. So now we can easily, without it being too liquidy and spreading all over the place, have ourselves a little ball, or you could also call them little bites, little pasty. And now it's very easy to rub in the powder. And there's our pasty. And I mean, I also like just calling them little herbal bites or herbal chewables. The other nice use for these is they're very kid friendly, obviously depending on the herb that you use. So ginger, I'm going to say way too spicy for a kid's palate. But imagine the possibility of other herbs. You know, you can use powdered rose, powdered marshmallow root, powdered elecampane, pretty much any herbal powder. You know, if you have, let's say, astragalus powder, or really, again, the sky's the limit. So in this case, you could do one out of cinnamon powder as well. But again, it would probably be spicy like the ginger is. Just know that whichever herb that you use, it is like a solid hit of that herb. You really get the flavor in these pasties. But because of the honey and because it's just a chewable, you know, it's kind of like how kids and even myself as an adult like really like a chewable vitamin. Pasties can kind of be like a chewable herbal vitamin. The only thing that you need to consider is that the digestibility of the herb. So sometimes, and that can be a kind of a concern with powders, that if you have a weak digestion, you may not digest all of the, let's say, nutritional benefits of the herb as a powder. But that's a really specific concern, because I'd say for, at least for myself, with ginger and the way that I use the pasty, I get the benefit immediately. I think mainly because the flavor is so pronounced and just because it's so convenient. So in this case, I'm making really big ones. So I would say you want yours to be even more like a half of this size, because the bigger you make them, the more intensely you're going to have that, like, whoa, ginger, oh my gosh, that's hot, like very much pronounced on your palate, which could be a good thing if that's what you enjoy. But it is intense. Like, I love ginger, and sometimes, especially with these bigger sized ones, so see, I'm going to break that down and make it a bit smaller. Honestly, smaller is better. I love ginger, and this is still very hot, very intense on the palate. All right, and now I'm starting to get into my groove, starting to make them a little bit smaller. And just remember, you cannot make these, I would say personally, too small, because when you have a bunch of little small ones, then you can just take more if you need to. But if you take one big one, you might be like, oh my gosh, that was way too much ginger. My whole mouth is on fire. And you just have to drink a ton of water, and it's not as much of a good time. So that's why I say, if you can, just err on the smaller side. It's easy to take more if they're too small, but you're kind of screwed if you make them too big. But even then, I just drink a bunch of water to rinse down the ginger. So my personal guidance is to make them about that small or even as teeny as that little one there. And when I get through with this process, I'm going to have this plate filled with them. So now that I'm starting to get to my groove, I'll just speed up the video. So it's been almost 20 minutes now. I'm probably going to turn off my camera just to give it a little bit of a break, but you can probably see that once you start to get into like the groove of doing it, it actually starts moving pretty quickly. Again, this process isn't really about how quickly you're able to make all of the pastilles or how long it takes. It's more about the meditative practice and putting your energy into your hands as you're creating these pastilles. You know, we want to empower them with the magical intent that you want. And note that you don't actually have to coat your pastilles. If you don't, they're just going to stay sticky. But in this case, you could just say, oh, maybe I don't like cinnamon and I just want the ginger. The reason why I like to coat these in cinnamon is because it does ease that heat from the ginger with another flavor. And I'm hoping the orange will also enliven the mixture a bit as well, because I do typically take these first thing when I wake up in the morning. But you could make the mixture of ginger and coat it with ginger, or you could make the mixture and coat it with just orange peel, or again, whatever kind of flavor you want. So I definitely encourage you to mix stuff up, you know, take whatever herbs that you know you enjoy the flavor of and you enjoy eating and make some pastilles with them. You see that now it's becoming really muscle memory. It's becoming really meditative. I just take the tiniest little bit, dip it in the cinnamon, and you kind of get in the zone with it. Maybe play some relaxing music and take this time for yourself. That's really how I like to see making herbal medicine as well, as just being a time to meditate and connect, and kind of a time for self-care. You know, there's so much else going on in the world that we all could use some time to ourselves, listening to some good music that makes us feel good, and just having some quiet time to relax and be creative and connect with our energy and make ourselves some medicine. So yeah, as you can see, I still have at least half, if not more than half, of my mixture, which is why I said when I'm done this whole plate, that I'm putting them on is going to be absolutely filled. But I'm going to shut the camera off here and come back so you can see the final plate. All right, and we're finished. I used up all of the powder that I could possibly use. Ended up being, I want to say, about 2 tablespoons of ginger to roughly 1.5, maybe about 1 teaspoon of honey. You could probably get away with using like even just 1 teaspoon of honey. Use the same amount, the 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon and 1/2 teaspoon of orange peel. And that created this mini, very small pastilles. You can see I made some of the larger ones, broke them in half and made them smaller, so they're almost all about the same uniform size. This is enough of the ginger chewables, I'd say, to last me maybe 2, maybe 3 months, kind of depending on how the month goes. So I want to say that the whole process from beginning to end took me perhaps a little over an hour. But of course that includes kind of doing it on video and everything and having a couple hiccups at the beginning. So if it was just me doing it and if I got my ratios right at the beginning, probably would have taken more of like 30 to 45 minutes, especially if you get into kind of a rhythm doing it and maybe even make multiple little bites and put them all over the plate to coat them instead of just one at a time. You know, you'll find the rhythm that's right for you. Again, I don't think it took too long considering how long they're going to last me and considering that they're a lot more affordable than the ginger chewables you can buy at the market. And of course, I know that they don't look cute. Like, this isn't the cutest herbal medicine. And in my opinion, herbal medicine just has to work great. It doesn't have to look great. It's not going to get on any of the top pages on Instagram or anything like that, but it will for sure help you out with any issues that you're experiencing, you know, such as the nausea or runny nose, things like that. Like, it is very potent herbal medicine. And I will say that if you do make these with ginger and you find that the ginger taste is not that strong or it doesn't give you that instant heat, maybe check the freshness of your ginger, because our powdered herbs, they can expire. You know, the spice blends in your cabinet, maybe you haven't refreshed them in a while, maybe they're a couple years old. Your ginger may not be as potent and you may not get as much of that fiery benefit from it. So definitely check and make sure that you're using more of a freshly ground ginger. Obviously it's going to be dried, but just check the expiration date, make sure that it's not expired. And that's good to do for any of the herbs or spices that are in your spice drawer anyways. But yeah, that's really it for pastilles. I also wanted to mention that I learned how to make this method through the Rooted Medicine Circle. So if you are interested in finding more recipes, more ideas for pastilles, I highly recommend that you join that group because it's full of knowledge, so much good advice from Rosalie and Emily. This is just my second time making these pastilles, so I'm sure I have a lot more to learn and experiment with. And I also wanted to mention that if you did want to make these more pretty, you can use, I would say, like freshly powdered edible roses will also give it a nice little pink hue on the outside. But that's up to you. Have fun with it. Get creative. And if you made it to the end of this video, I'd love it if you could leave me a comment, maybe just a heart comment, or let me know what you think of this idea. Let me know, especially if you try it, if you've made these before, or if you have any other ideas for cool recipes to try and make for herbal chewables. And that's it. Thank you all so much. I hope you are blessed and well and are able to take some time for yourself to make some strong herbal medicine. And blessed be.